Hi, everybody. Welcome to our micro-learning session promoted by Sigma and hosted by Sigma called Finding Balance. I am Michelle Schuster. I work at Boston Children's Hospital on the inpatient hematology oncology unit.
I'm Dennis Doherty, and I'm a nursing professional development specialist in the Department of Clinical Education, Informatics, Practice, and Quality.
Dennis and I do not have any industry relationships or conflicts of interest to disclose.
Our one objective for this session is that you'll complete a work-life balance self-reflection exercise that we're actually going to have you do as part of this micro-learning session. So we talk about the phrase work-life balance, and I want to start the session and just say that personally, this is a me thing. I don't love the phrase work-life balance. It feels a little like too all or nothing for me. I think that if we think about, like you not having balance is like a bad thing. And we think about if like a tightrope walker has to have balance, if they don't, they might be in trouble, provided they don't have a safety net. And so I feel like work-life balance, the phrase, is a little too all or nothing, right? It's like one way or the other. And I think about folks that we might say like, oh, like they work a ton and they don't have any balance, they need to work-life balance. But for that person, it might really work for them. And for someone else, it might not. So I like this term that I've heard, work-life harmony. Doesn't harmony sound better?
It sounds so much better. Tell me more about this work-life harmony, Dennis.
Well, I think work-life harmony opens up the door for flexibility and individuality in what work-life harmony is. And I think about for different individuals, it brings into the play what they value and what brings them joy. And so if there's someone that really does enjoy working, and they might work a lot, and that might work for them. But if there's someone that really gets joy from having personal time and working on hobbies and spending time with family, whatever that might be, that's going to work for that individual. And this could sort of ebb and flow throughout someone's sort of career lifespan. They might have times where they really are like focused on work and that's what works for them, and they might have times where they're focused on other things and they're able to do that, and that's what works for them. So I like work-life harmony as sort of it's really about the individual deciding like if they're in harmony. Does that make sense to you?
I think that's great. Yeah, so the individual gets to take control and figure out what makes them whole. It's not that tightrope balancing act. It's really about just that circle of completion. That's amazing. So now we're going to ask you guys a little bit more. So what does work-life harmony mean to you? Have you heard this phrase before? Is this a new phrase? Just take a second to think about it. Have you ever stopped to think, what do you value most? Is that finding time to do hobbies? Is that spending time with the family? Is that working and creating something new? Where do you find the most value in the day? And whatever it is for you is okay. There's no right, there's no wrong answers. It's whatever feels right to you. And the last question we want you guys to reflect on is, how do you feel about your current work-life harmony? Is it in balance? Is what you value where you're able to spend more of your time, or is it not? Is there areas for you to shift some things around? Maybe just take this moment just to think about, okay, am I carrying out what matters to me? Am I having work-life harmony, or is there some room for improvement?
There's definitely some challenges to achieving this harmony, right? I've heard this phrase in the literature, we're an always on culture now, right? We have technology that allows us to communicate with our colleagues 24/7, 365, whether it's email or text messages or or DMs. We're always on, and that can definitely be a challenge to sort of separating your work and your personal life. But I think about always being on in the context of COVID-19 and this pandemic. And I think about nurses, and they can always be on because they might, they're going to work and dealing with the pandemic, and then they come home and they might be watching the news or on social media and just sort of being inundated with COVID-19 pandemic nonstop.
Right.
And whereas some folks, my accountant friend might go to work and that might be their way of escaping COVID-19. As healthcare professionals, we don't really have that opportunity, I guess. And then the other factor that I think about always being on is that we might have to go to work and be on, and then we come home from work and we have to be on because we're the director of our home and we're working on homeschooling potentially and dealing with new roles that we have to do with children. So there's a lot of this always on. And so I think about what opportunities do we have to sort of, make those clear delineation boundaries in our work and personal lives. How do we intentionally set up our personal time so that it's personal and our work time our work obligations don't bleed into that? And just one easy thing that comes to mind that I'm hearing it a lot is sort of structuring your days off so that they're your days off, and now you're not checking email potentially, or not responding to things as they come up until you're at work. Or if you're someone that sort of has this I'm working every day, maybe you're working from your home office now instead of going into your office, setting clear boundaries about I start work at 9 and I end work at 5, or whatever that might be that works for you, because there's flexibility there. But being intentional about when you're working and when you're not. And it's increasingly harder to do that. And so that's, I think, one way to combat the always on culture is really with intentionality about when I'm on and when I'm off.
That's an important message that you're spreading. And it's really important to be able to unplug a little bit from being always on. It's hard to do, and we want to recognize that, but it's also just as important, like Dennis said, to be able to separate your work from your personal time. So I wanted to talk a little bit about new normal in our work environments. So being a staff nurse, I'm still working bedside, going into the hospital every shift. And what is the new work normal for you guys? I know, at least for me, every time I come into work, I have to do a symptom check-in list. Do I have a fever, sore throat, kind of running through that. And then if I'm fit to work, I'm able to get my mask and go up to my unit. So even at there you go, Dennis is at work. So even the second that we walk into those doors, right, Dennis, it's okay, COVID-19 is happening. This is that reminder. Here you go. So it's almost like this is just our new normal. And for many of us, we're having policy changes frequently about what PPE is required or what is changing, what are the new visitor guidelines, So there's always something new that we have to be almost expecting. And I know something on my workplace that is different is that we have to physically distance from one another, from coworkers. So I can no longer just sit in the back room with a bunch of nurses and kind of have that time to just learn about what's going on in everybody's lives and just to kind of unwind, de-stress a little bit. So now we're having to physically distance so much that we can't, all eat together. And those are all different things. And Dennis, I was thinking about something else. One of the new normals that I have to live with working in pediatrics is that kids are more scared of me when I walk in the room. So if I have my N95, if I have my face shield, I'm gowned up. I kind of look like an alien person. Some kids tell me I look like a scuba diver. It's just, it's such a different atmosphere for them. So I'm all of these new normals are happening. And so that can lead to a lot of stress, and it can lead to feeling kind of burnt out sometimes. But I think, as you mentioned, it's important to recognize these challenges so that we can find opportunities to overcome these challenges and to still take care of ourselves. So that, for me, looks like finding joy. And we encourage you guys to find joy in your workplace and try to remember why you got into this profession. What aspects of nursing is it that brings you that joy, fulfills you, and really gives you that harmony in your work life? It's really important not to lose sight of why you became a nurse, because there's so many different reasons for all of us, and to remember that good even when these moments are really tough and challenging and it seems like there's no end in sight, just finding that solace within ourselves of, well, I'm a nurse because what I love about my job is, so even trying to see those little silver linings every day is important.
I think another challenge is just the kind of the lifestyle changes that we've had to make because of the pandemic. Maybe before this, we had a lot of routines and rituals that helped us to have that work-life harmony, and now we're not able to do some of those things. Maybe we like to go to sporting events, or we like to go out to dinner with our significant other, or if you're like me, you like to go see live music. Like those type of things are either not happening now, or if they are, they're happening differently, or maybe you're not comfortable doing them. Maybe it's maybe your gym has opened back up again, and you go into your favorite class or your workout studio, and you're not ready to do that. So those sort of things that we might have relied on previously might not be options right now. So that's a challenge. And so I think to sort of combat that, we want to think about what are some new routines and rituals? Maybe there's an opportunity for a new hobby, or to read books, or whatever that might be. But I think that trying to create some new ritual or routine for us that's for us during this pandemic lifestyle is really, really, really important. So what we want to do now is we want to do a self-reflection exercise. And this is something that we do with our newly licensed nurse in our transition to nursing practice program, and where we actually ask them to focus on the best possible patient encounter that they've had so far in their career, and we walk them through this self-reflection activity. And so me and Michelle have expanded this to be a work-life harmony self-reflection. So what we want you to do is encourage you is to, if you have to pause this micro-learning session to think about things, if you want to write things down or journal things, you can do it. You can use the notes on your phone if you want to. But the first thing we want you to think about is to go back and think about over the last several months. Can you pick out a day that brought you a sense of joy? If the one day in particular. When you figure that out, we want you to describe that day. What was so special about it? What did you do? Who were you with? Where were you? And so now the last question is, we want you to ask yourself, how can you set yourself up to have more of this in the coming weeks? So Michelle, are you able to share your work-life harmony self-reflection with us?
Yeah, I definitely will. So let's see. I'm going to use kind of a recent work example that's kind of come into mind. Just last Sunday, I was working a day shift on my unit, and I was working with this young man. He was 22 years old, and his mom, and I was able to give him his last chemo ever. He's done with his treatment now, which is such an exciting time. So something that we do on my unit, my floor, is that when people are done with treatment, they leave to go out to the elevators, and we give them a bubble parade. And that's where staff lines the hallways, and we typically blow bubbles. So we can't do that normally how we would with COVID, because we can't be pulling down our mask and blowing bubbles. But what was so special about this day is that even though he was 22 and some 22-year-olds really wouldn't want a bubble parade, I knew that this was such a big moment for him and for his mom too. So I talked to my staff nurses, and we made signs, and we got a song ready, and we kind of led them out this way, and they had no idea that this was coming. And just to see their faces, it was such a nice moment. And for the nurses, instead of blowing bubbles, we just were waving our bubble wands and stuff like that. And you could sense that people were smiling under their masks, and you could sense this really great moment that everybody was getting to share it. and be a part of. And it was just so nice to take those few moments out of our regular work day, but just be with my coworkers, share in this special moment with this family. And I just felt so good. And it renewed this sense of why I love working on this floor, and those happy moments and those joyous moments that we get to share with families and patients. And it was something that I still smile about to this day. And it's just like really holding a special place in my heart. So that's something that I'm reflecting on. Yeah.
So you're really, I like that you're finding that joy that we talked about in your work, which is great.
Yeah, I am.
And so how do you set yourself up for more of that?
That's a good question, right? Because I can't just give everybody a bubble parade, even if I want to. I think it's going to be about finding opportunities to connect with coworkers and celebrate the little moments with patients. So we celebrate the big moments, but also those little moments. And whether that's having a social distance dance party outside of a patient's room, or just finding ways to connect together and still show our support to one another. I think I'm going to look for more ways just to share in those small and big victories with my coworkers and my patients more.
Cool. That's great.
Yeah. So Dennis, I want to ask you the same. Do you have a work-life harmony situation or scenario you'd like to share with us today?
Yeah, I think I do have. I probably have a couple of things, but I'm going to share something. Okay. So probably about 2 months ago in our state, they opened up golf courses again, and I'm not really much of a golfer, but a couple of my friends were like, "Oh, we should play golf because this is like would be an opportunity to get together." And I was like, yeah, I think that's a great idea. So it ended up being an awesome day. It was like, it kind of took me by surprise. I was like going into it, like worried about like, oh, I'm going to be awful at playing golf and my friends are going to laugh at me. But when at the end of the day, I had this really great time. I was outside. It was a beautiful day. I was with friends that I've known since college. And it was really, it just really was like just a positive experience. I left there like, oh, this is great. And so I think that I sort of did this unintentionally where I was like, I want more of that. And I said, no one else is going to keep the ball rolling here. So I've been the one that's been like, oh, we have a tea time in 2 weeks. And we've been doing that every 2 weeks for the last couple of months. And we're going to continue that. And I think that me being intentional about carving out that time and getting them to commit to when they could do it and setting up the time, me taking the lead on that has kept that going, and I think we'll keep that going, because in my circle, if I'm not the one taking the lead, no one else is gonna. So that's how I'm setting myself up to have more of those positive experiences in the coming weeks, and hopefully get better at my golf game.
That is wonderful. So you're being the one, you're taking that initiative. I think that's so important. That's awesome.
Yeah. I like this reflective exercise, right? What does it take? A couple of minutes. It's something that you don't have to do it every day, but I think it's a good check-in. So, maybe every once in a while, thinking about where have you, had, particular joy, what were the circumstances, and how can you sort of make sure that happens again, or recreate or set yourself up for success to have more of those experiences is definitely something that doesn't take long, right? That in 2 or 3 minutes, you could probably identify something. And as you do this activity, I find that I sort of pick up on things as I'm doing it. I was just recently, one of the golf guys, he gave me this book. He was like, oh, I think you'd want to read this. I haven't read a book in probably, I guess, a non-academic book in probably about 3 years. And so it was just like this easy, it was just, it wasn't long. I read it. After, the first three chapters, I was like, oh, I need more books. I want to get a book when this one's done. And so I was even like intentionally thinking about, I'm gonna, reach out to my, friend, you got any more books? Because it was really just something that kind of filled me up, I guess, to a certain degree. And it was something for me, so I think that as you do it, you sort of just,
Yeah.
it becomes part of your routine. Like you pick up on when
Right.
something like is working for you and you want more of it.
Right. It's kind of like that snowball effect. And I feel like one self-care activity is leading to
Hmm.
more balance and more harmony. And that's
Yeah.
amazing. So there's no
Yeah.
right recipe or track. It's everybody gets to find what makes them happy and what brings them harmony. And that's
Yeah.
wonderful.
I think we all have things that we enjoy. We all have, unique, personal values that we bring into our
Mhm.
lives. So it's really important to pay attention to those. And I think that this reflective exercise provides a space to, do that reflection, think about what's important to you, and how do you get more of it. So
Amazing.
with that, our challenge to you is to do this reflection and try to come up with just one thing that you can do to set yourself up to have more, joy
Hmm.
in the coming weeks. So go for it, I think.
Yes. And thank you guys for listening today. And we hope that we've brought some new ideas to the surface and you start thinking about your work-life harmony just a little bit more. Thank you all for listening.
Thank you for joining us.